So last week we talked about the 5 types of suffering and looked at a scripture for each. We looked at the 4 sides of suffering: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, with scriptures addressing each of those. And so then I asked you guys, well, what are some areas in life specifically that this stuff comes into play? And here's the list that you guys gave me. I typed it all out, each one: work, health, finances, family issues, death, betrayal, sin, worry, and government, which I would maybe say like cultural, societal problems at large, but that was the word that was used. So all of these things affect or can affect one's emotional and mental health. Emotional health, again, has to do with the actions of others and how we respond to it. Mental health is more like you get inside your own head. It certainly can be connected to something that somebody else has done, but it has more to do with maybe your reaction to, societal problems at large. And it's just, you're battling with yourself. Physical health, we talked like last week from the Psalms. David, going through certain things, his sleep cycle was messed up. He couldn't eat. His body was affected by it. He talks about his skin was clinging to his bones. Job talks about that same thing because of external issues. Well, that can certainly affect your physical health. And then, of course, it can affect your spiritual life if you allow it. Any of these things can affect your spiritual life. You can work too much. You can allow that to consume you. Family issues. Somebody betrays you. Any of those things can, if we allow them to, can affect our spiritual life. So, we've got, including tonight, 5 weeks. That's 9 things. So I'm going to have to group these together. And so what I grouped together for tonight are these 3: family issues, betrayal, and worry. So that's what we're going to talk about, because the Bible addresses all those things. So let's get started. Relationships, betrayal, and so I guess I expanded the family thing to relationships in general and how they can affect us. So let's start here, the family structure given by God. Somebody go ahead and read Genesis 2:18 through 25. Okay. Okay. A help meet. What does that word M-E-E-T mean? Yeah. Comparable, suitable. A helper who is comparable, because within that immediate context, you've got the cattle, the birds of the air, the beasts of the field, but there's nothing at that point in time comparable to man. And so God then creates woman. And it's interesting, we're talking about relationships, betrayal, and worry. It doesn't take long before Eve does something, Adam does something, God calls him into question, and what does the first thing out of his mouth? The woman you gave me. And then what does she do? What have you done? What does she say? Well, the serpent. It's like, here we go. Immediately blame shifting is, I wouldn't say it was miraculously created, but it came into existence in that moment of time. That's God's original intent. That's God's original design for the home. So let's talk about this for a few minutes. I left you a little space there between this line and the next. What are some things that have disrupted this original arrangement? And specifics. What? Culture. Okay. Okay. You're messing with God's design. And Romans 1 talks about that. The men with the men, woman leaving the natural use of the woman or the man, and two women being together. That has disrupted this natural arrangement. One thing that Romans says about those relationships is that they are against nature. This was never God's intent. All right, what else? So culture. All right, yes. And homosexuality, the LGBTQ 2SIA plus movement. It just that acronym continues to grow, because if you leave anybody out, you might as well leave everybody out. That's a subheading of culture. So what else specifically from culture do you think has affected or disrupted this original arrangement of one man and one woman?
I think that people have forgotten the roles of the man and the woman.
Yes.
You know, the woman's to be the keeper of the home, and we don't see that a lot, or it's like that shameful.
Yes. The roles specifically of the males and females. Absolutely. Yes. Women can do everything men can do. And is that true? Can women do everything men can do? No. Can men do everything women can? No. So it's odd that our culture, our society in particular, always looks at just the one side. Well, you must be misogynistic because you say that women can't do everything men can do. Well, what are you then if you say that men can't do everything women can do? They never talk about that side. It's always about the female empowerment. All right. What else? Divorce.
In general, it's too broad a term, but sin, meaning divorce, all the immorality that comes with the, mixed families, how it all happens. It really, in the school system, you just see so many kids that suffer from bad situations like that.
Yes. Yes.
It's like a cycle that's passed along each generation.
Definitely. Tammy and others in here in the school system, you guys see that every day. The effects of broken homes, which obviously that would include divorce. The effects of, what would you call it? Mixed homes, step parents and things like this. What else? Apathy towards marriage in general. Yeah, okay, we can just live together. If it doesn't work out, there's no legal ramifications. We just separate. I'll take my stuff, you keep yours, and yeah, good one. What else? And that's statistics over the last few decades have shown that the numbers of marriages have declined while the numbers of cohabitations have gone up. But the longer you live together before you get married, the quicker you get divorced once you get married. I mean, the statistics bear out that when you mess with God's original design, it doesn't go well. What else has disrupted the marital arrangement? Yeah. Technological advances. Yes, absolutely. Lack of knowledge of God's Word. Okay. So,
Go along with what Jeremy said, if they feel like it's okay, to cohabitate, without even considering the marriage law that God set forth.
since you mentioned that one, go, if you wouldn't mind, go to 1 Peter 3, and I want you to read verse 7. 1 Peter 3:7. What were you going to say, Mr. Keith? War? Did you say war? Yeah. Families being pulled apart. Okay. Yeah, sure. And that's been going on for... Yeah. And I mean, there were even... So in Israel, you were given a year off if you got married, a year from battle to stay at home and live with your wife. All right. 1 Peter 3:7.
Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered.
Okay. That your prayers be not hindered. I've mentioned that before, of the husband-wife relationship. If it's not right, it's like your call signal's dropped. Your cell signal's dropped. That's what that phrase means. I mean, not the cell phone part, but the old, that prayer's not getting any higher than the ceiling. You've heard that? That's what that means. And that's tied directly to the husband-wife relationship. Anything else you can think of? Okay. Pressures of life.
And it's different. I think about this. Sometimes I think, boy, I'm glad I live in this day and time because, it's always comfortable in the house, temperatures. And I like watching Lost on the Prairie, and I'm thinking of how hard they had it back then,
Yeah.
in a way. But yet they had stress because they had worry, but it was different.
It was different,
Now
yeah.
there's just a lot more stress, I feel like. We're just
Yeah.
so fast, we've got so many things to do, and it's just hard to keep up with everything.
I would include, and this is a part of God's original arrangement, but it can become a disruptor, are kids. And what I mean by that is, kids become the number one priority in marriage. And, mom goes this way, dad goes this way, and I've seen this in my own family. Once the kids are gone, why do we stay together? There's no relationship there because the kids are gone. Our purpose is now gone. So, what was initially a part of God's initial arrangement has been allowed to disrupt it. And I think that, of course, goes to societal pressures too. Anything else? One person on the live stream says when women had to start working outside of the home, and really that was like the World War II era. It changed ever since that point in time. That's not to say women never worked outside of the home before that, but that's like when it really took off, is the 40s, and it wasn't long after that you have the women's liberation movement. And a few years ago, I wrote contributed a chapter for a book. I don't know if it's ever been published or not, but my particular chapter that I had to write was on what's called third wave feminism. And it is like we were talking about a little earlier. Women are equal to men in that they can do anything. Mom can be dad. Mom can do anything dad can do. And that's just not reality. So, anything else that you can think of?
I think there's definitely a societal pressure to conform to these trends that we see. If you resist it in any way, you're a bigot and you're intolerant.
Yeah. They start throwing out all the phobias at you. Yeah, definitely. Societal pressure is a big one. All right, so there's no question that God's original family structure has been disrupted, and by a bunch of different things. So Derek mentions, and he read for us 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 7, that the husbands are commanded to live with their wives according to knowledge. What does that mean? Reading the verse is one thing. What does that mean? husbands, that you need to dwell with your wife according to knowledge? I don't want you to answer yet, women. See if the guys know anything. And I'm the teacher, so I don't have to answer. What do you think that means? You got to dwell with your wife according to knowledge. I knew a couple. I'll just give you a little story here. Back several years ago, not here, that and Gail's heard this story before and kind of, I guess you would say, lived through this with me. A family, couple, older couple, 60s. Okay, by the time you're in your 60s, you think you'd know better, right? You think you might pull yourself together, hopefully by your 60s, and you've got this kind of figured out. You're not perfect, but you're not going to kill each other, but you never can tell, I guess. But there was this couple that one of the elders and I don't know how many times we went over to their house, and one time she was literally threatening to kill him. And he had written down everything that he contributed to that marriage, all the money that was his, all the finances and everything in the house that was his, and he was just yelling at her about all this is mine and you use this and it's like that's not exactly how you dwell with one another according to knowledge. I was listening to a lecture back a couple years ago on relationships, and this is hard sometimes. Have any of you ever had an argument with your wife? Nobody, huh? That's amazing. Bunch of liars. Yeah, Steve's going to ask and see. And the guy doing the lecture made the point of, if you're going to get an argument, and this goes both ways, not just for husbands, it goes both ways, that if your goal is just to win the argument, well, you then have a defeated spouse who, if you keep badgering and keep being verbally abusive towards and bringing this up, and all you have then is a defeated spouse who resents you. So how do you dwell with one another? We know that. We're going to have arguments. We're going to have disagreements. We're going to go back and forth. We know that. Okay? What does it mean to dwell together according to knowledge? Okay, with understanding. In an understanding way. Okay? That puts a little different spin on it. Sounds a little different than dwell with them according to knowledge. It's not like I have to know 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a mentality of your spouse, and you're going to do the best you can to be what you ought to be and to handle yourself in a proper way. I don't always do that. I know that. I'm not perfect. Okay? We do. Men and women think differently. Breaking news. That's right. Men don't think like women, and women don't think like men. And I don't always think about that. So I would say we all struggle with that at times. All right, so there are a lot of things, there's no question about it. There are a lot of things that have contributed to the disruption of God's arrangement for the family. No question about it. All right, so any other thoughts or questions on that particular section before we move on here? Proverbs gives us some insight to the husband-wife relationship. Song of Solomon does, although Song of Solomon is a book more of the physical intimacy. I've seen people try to explain that book away and what it actually talks about. I sat in a class one time where the teacher was just saying, well, it has nothing to do with the physical intimacy of a husband and wife. It's a parallel of Christ's relationship to the church. Well, no, it's not. It's not what that book's about at all. So there is a lot that the Bible addresses. You have, again, God's original intent here in the early chapters of Genesis. Of course, Jesus brings this up in Matthew 19 and Mark chapter 10. Those are parallel passages with the discussion of divorce and remarriage. And he makes the point there in Mark chapter 10. It's Mark's record that says this. Matthew's doesn't. Mark 10:6 says that from the beginning of creation, this is how it was. From the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. And for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave. All right? Cleave is an interesting word. It means you cement something together. It's like we'd use glue. Cleave to his wife, and those two shall become one. And that has to do with the physical relationship. I think it includes more than that, but I believe it's primarily that. There's that union that belongs nowhere else in life. The physical relationship before marriage is fornication. It's sinful. And that's been a disruptor. Promiscuity before marriage is very common for guys and girls. And that affects how people have from what I can tell, and again, like I said last week, I'm no mental health professional, and I'm not going to pretend to be, but in listening to lectures and doing reading on this kind of stuff over the years, it affects when a man or a woman is promiscuous, they sleep around before they get married, it affects their ability to bond with the person they eventually marry. Because they've been passed around, for lack of a better term. And, well, that's not God's design. And when you mess with God's design, it affects other things. There are consequences to that. That's disrupted this original arrangement. But that's celebrated. I mean, in our culture, you guys know just as well as I do that stuff is celebrated. That's freedom. That's liberation. That's empowering to be able to do that. There's a podcast that I've watched from time to time that has a panel on it. And on one side, the panel is conservative. One guy, in fact, is an Eastern Orthodox Christian, as he calls them, as they're called. And the other side is as worldly as you could possibly imagine. I mean, just take my word for it. As worldly as you could possibly imagine. And the justifications that they make for that worldliness are pretty, extremely surface level. It's all about pleasure. It's all about in the moment. It's about having everything you want right now. So, okay, somebody turn over to Hebrews 11. This made me think of a verse as I was talking about that out loud. Hebrews 11, I believe it's verse 25. If somebody would read that, please. But that's what people think life is about. We've only got a certain amount of time that we can use our bodies for these specific purposes, and you need to take advantage of it. Every opportunity you get, you need to go get what you can. You need to go get who you can. Hebrews 11:25, maybe.
Choosing rather to suffer affliction
Yeah.
for the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season.
Than to enjoy it. That's talking about Moses and the choice he made to no longer be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. The New King James says, rather than enjoying the passing pleasures of sin. So again, that kind of puts a little different spin on it in the sense of it's like you're able to picture it better. It doesn't last very long, but then you've got to deal with the consequences. And some of the consequences of the passing pleasures of sin are it's disrupted the family arrangement. All right, anything else on that particular topic? All right, one more comment here. The Bible tells us how the husband and wife are to treat each other. It doesn't say it's easy, and it isn't always easy. But we are to do so, and I believe we can with patience and prayer. Of course we can. God does not require of us what we cannot do. All right, nothing else? Let's talk about friendship real quick. I need readers. Put your hand up if you're going to read. All right, let's go here. Proverbs 17:7, 18:24. Who else? All right, Zach 27:5 and 6. And then, Jeff, if you would get the last two in 27, verses 10 and 17. And just read them when you get there.
A friend loveth all times, and a brother is born for adversity.
Okay? A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. 18:24, who's got that?
A man that hath friends must show himself friendly, and there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother.
Okay? 27, 5, and 6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. I like that verse. You want people in your life who will tell you the truth. You don't want people who just flatter you for the sake of their own personal benefit. You know, I'm gonna build Jerry up because, well, he might can get me something one day. I saw him walking in tonight with a fishing pole. I'll be really nice to Jerry. So that's how some people treat relationships. I'm going to befriend these certain people because they can do things for me. No, that's not the kind of friends you want. Nothing wrong with having friends that you can, this sounds bad, but that you can take advantage of. But what I mean by that is that are dependable, that are helpful, not go out and buy you something. All right, 27, 10, and 17. I like that verse. As iron sharpens iron, so a man does what to the countenance of his friend? Sharpens the countenance of his friend. There you go. So, like I said, I included relationships, marriage. I guess we could talk about child-parent relationship, friendship. There's a warning that I find in Proverbs. Somebody read this one for me, 25:17. And this kind of goes back to what I said about taking advantage of your friends. You can do that, and I wouldn't suggest you do that. But it's like, I forget who read it, but a friend is born for adversity. Or a brother is born out of adversity. Well, you can create or enhance friendships with people when you go through times of difficulty together. Difficult times can bring you closer and can strengthen a bond. And that goes for friendships, that goes for marriages, anything like that. 25:17.
Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house, lest he become weary of you and hate you.
You know, it's about time for you to be going home, isn't it? You've heard that old saying, visiting with people, and somebody will say something like, well, we need to go to bed so they can go home. You know, don't be the person that people are like, oh man, he's coming over again. I think that's a word of wisdom there about how you treat people. All right, anything else on friendship? So we're talking about suffering and grief, emotional stress, all of that kind of stuff. Family can do that to you sometimes. Friendships can do that to you sometimes. How about betrayal? And I want to move quickly through this. Betrayal, we're not going to read. You really need to read 2 Samuel 12, 15, the first 12 verses. But somebody just get verse 12 real quick. 2 Samuel 15:12. And I need somebody else to go to Psalm 41. Who's going to do that for me? Psalm 41. All right, Steve, 7 through 9. This is about when Absalom rebels against David. He tries to usurp, and he does, in fact, usurp the throne. And David's counselor by the name of Ahithophel, I mentioned this last week, sides with Absalom. 2 Samuel 15:12, somebody.
And Absalom sent from Ahithophel the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city, even from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices, and the conspiracy was strong, for the people increased continually.
The conspiracy was strong. Now listen to Psalm 41, 7 through 9 here.
All who hate me whisper together against me. Against me they devise my hurt. An evil disease, they say, clings to him. And now that he lies down, he will rise up no more. Even my old familiar friend, in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me.
That's what he's writing about. My own familiar friend, the guy I ate with at the table, he's lifted up his heel against me. Of course, that's also used in reference to Judas, isn't it? So, betrayal is a way that we can suffer, and people will do that to you. If we think that people won't do that to us, then we are very naive. Anyway, let's do this. Let's run to Psalm 55 real quick. I've got something I want to read to you. I've got it on the screen. It's a little bit lengthy, so I don't want to spend a great deal of time here. But Psalm 55 is another one of those psalms that David writes in one of these moments. And he has many of these moments. There are years where he's on the run from Saul. He's on the run from Ahithophel and from others. And many of his psalms are written in these times. So he's asking God to listen to his prayer. Don't hide yourself from me. Verse 4, my heart is severely pained within me. And what's he talking about? Well, look, starting in verse 12 of Psalm 55. It's not an enemy who reproaches me. If it were, I could handle that. That would make sense to me. Think about betrayal. If it was somebody who hated me, okay, I get it. It's not he who hates me who has exalted himself against me, then I could hide from him. He doesn't know the places I go. He doesn't know my daily routine, maybe. And then he says, but it was you, a man my equal, my companion and my acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together and walked to the house of God in the throng. We went to worship together. Has anything ever happened like that with you, with members of the church who have betrayed you? You're trying to do what's right, and they're constantly in your ear trying to drag you down? Or maybe not in your ear, in somebody else's ear about you? Like I said, if you think that doesn't happen, then, well, it does. Worry. Do any of you have kids? I tell you, when I was growing up, back in the 80s, and I guess you'd say the early 90s, probably somewhat in the 2000s, no cell phones. Well, I don't know. When did cell phones come out? Anyway, I never had one until I got one later. Life was completely different. And now, I used to have this app on my phone, Life 360. How many of you have that on your phone with kids? Come on now. Everybody tell me. You have it for Stan. Oh, my gosh. I could see that. Is that helpful? Okay, I have a yes and a no from the same person. How many times have Gail and I had this conversation? Our kids are traveling and they're stopped. Life 360 stopped. And you got to call them immediately. It's almost like if you didn't have that app, you would never know that, and you wouldn't be thinking about, they stopped, what happened? So, technological advances have disrupted the family unit. Well, that kind of stuff can create worry. Friendships can create worry. Marital problems can create worry. A lot of stuff falls under that category. So I want to read, this stuff comes from a commentary on Psalm 55. David's response to this betrayal, he says, is multifaceted. He begins by pleading with God to hear his prayer and not to hide from his supplication. He describes his heart as being in anguish, and his fear is overwhelming, illustrating the depth of his emotional distress. And that's one thing, we talked about, emotional health. Despite his turmoil, David ultimately places his trust in God, declaring, "Cast your burden upon the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken." This verse encapsulates David's unwavering faith in God's justice and providence, even in the face of personal betrayal. And I think, in large, we could apply those principles to worry, to challenges that we have in that sense. The betrayal David experienced is not only a historical event, but also serves as a typological foreshadowing of the betrayal of Jesus by Judas. Just as David was betrayed by a close confidant, so too was Jesus betrayed by one of his own disciples. This parallel underscores the enduring relevance of David's Psalms, and they continue to provide comfort and insight to believers facing similar trials. David's ability to articulate his pain and yet reaffirm his trust in God. See, what a lot of people are tempted to do when they are betrayed or when they go through some difficulty with another person in the church is they'll just go to another church. Or they'll stop going to church. That is not the solution. Leaving one congregation to go to another congregation is not the solution to problems. If you're the cause of the problem, the solution is repentance. But we, just, using the broad sense of that term, we think, I'll just go down the road to a different church and everything's okay. That's not how that works. I don't think it's incidental that when you look at the early church, there was one congregation per city. There wasn't the Third and Bethel Church of Christ in Corinth, and then the Main Street Church of Christ in Corinth, and the Pilate Church of Christ in Corinth. That has really hurt congregations because sin will just move from one place to another. And there's never reconciliation, there's never repentance. I just go to a new place and everything's okay. David's ability to articulate his pain and yet reaffirm his trust in God has made the Psalms a source of solace and strength for countless generations. His writings remind believers that even in the darkest moments of betrayal and despair, God's presence and faithfulness remain steadfast. That's a main point of all 150 Psalms. You see people, particularly David, dealing with real life, dealing with real people, and his response to it, my God, why have you forsaken me? By the time you get to the end of that psalm, what's he saying? I told you this last week. What's he say at the end? You've not forsaken me. I feel that way, but I know you haven't. So, Psalm 22, this again is about Psalm 55. Any questions or comments before we stop tonight? I'm sorry?
Is it sin to worry?
The word worry, one thing that happens in the process of translation is you can lose the richness of some words. So like Matthew 6, the King James says, take no thought. The New King James says, do not worry. But the word that's translated the Greek word is merimnao. And it's the same word like in Philippians 4, do not be anxious. Or the King James says, be careful for nothing. It's allowing troubles and difficulties or even things to surround you and become your number one priority. Worry is not the right word for what that term means. I would say, is it a sin to worry? My answer to that is no. If you don't worry, something's wrong with you. Now, can worry become sinful? Of course. Mary and Martha, Luke chapter 10 is a perfect example of that. Martha was, I can't remember the words, but careful and troubled about many things. So it can become sinful. It's like anger. Anger is not sinful, but it can get that way. All right, guys. Thanks for your attention.